They told me very calmly that my baby might never breathe on his own again. No drama, no suspense, just facts, and somehow that hurt even more. In that moment, I realized something that few people talk about. Sometimes medicine gives you survival, but steals your certainty. And here's the part no one expects. This wasn't the end of our story. We're taught to believe that faith means instant miracles. But what if faith is actually built in waiting rooms? What if hope isn't loud, but stubborn? I learned that breathing isn't just a physical act. It's emotional, spiritual, deeply human. And when breathing becomes fragile, everything else gets real fast. If you've ever been told there's nothing more we can do, or felt your world shrink to machines, numbers, and silent prayers, this story is for you. Because what happened next challenged everything I believed about limits, medicine, and God. And it might change the way you see your own impossible situation too.
I never imagined time would shrink the way it did. One day I was counting months, planning outfits, dreaming big. The next I was counting breaths, deep ones, shaky ones, the scary kind. It's funny how life does that, right? Just flips the script without asking. And suddenly, breathing isn't automatic anymore. It's everything. Before all of this, I was just a quiet dreamer of motherhood. I pictured my baby sleeping on my chest, that soft rhythm we take for granted. I thought peace came wrapped in routine and normal beginnings. No one warns you that normal can disappear in a blink. And when it does, you start noticing miracles hiding in the smallest moments. Each breath became a message, almost a conversation. Some terrified me, others whispered, "Hold on a little longer." I'd catch myself celebrating things no one else could see, because when breathing turns fragile, hope learns to speak softly. And somewhere there, without realizing it, a new journey was already forming.
My pregnancy felt so ordinary that it almost felt boring, in the best way. Checkups were calm, smiles were reassuring, and everything seemed on track. I talked to my baby like we already knew each other, you know? I told him about the world, about love, about how safe everything would be. Still, no one said the word danger, so I kept believing in normal. I had no idea how close we were to the moment everything would change. The day my baby was born started like a celebration. For a second, the room was full of light, smiles, relief. I remember thinking, we made it, like the hard part was over. But that joy didn't last long enough to settle in my chest. Something felt off, even before anyone said a word. They noticed the jaundice first, then mentioned a heart murmur. Nothing sounded urgent at the time, just cautious, clinical, controlled. So I waited, because that's what mothers do. We wait and trust. I prayed quietly, convincing myself that monitoring meant safety. I didn't know waiting can also mean standing on the edge of a storm. Then came the moment I can never forget. My baby turned blue, and fear moved faster than thought. I ran into the hospital, my heart pounding louder than my footsteps. One look from the doctors told me everything had changed. And right there, without warning, the world I knew collapsed into silence. Everything moved fast after that, almost too fast to process. Tests, monitors, serious faces, whispers I wasn't meant to hear. They talked about infections, possibilities, things that might be wrong. I nodded along, pretending I understood, pretending I was calm. Inside, I was already bracing for something I couldn't name yet. The truth showed itself during surgery, in words that felt heavier than air. A severe congenital heart defect, an interrupted aortic arch. I didn't fully grasp the medical language, and honestly, I didn't need to. The tone told me everything my mind refused to accept. Life, as I knew it, had just split into a before and an after. From that day on, hospitals stopped feeling temporary. They became our address, our routine, our reality. I learned the sound of hallways, the rhythm of shifts, the weight of waiting. Dreams got packed away, replaced by one single goal: survival. and without realizing it, I stepped into a world I never planned to know. Days lost their names inside the ICU. Monday and Sunday felt exactly the same under fluorescent lights. Time stopped being measured by clocks and started being measured by vitals. Every small change on a monitor could shift my entire mood. It's strange how your heart learns a new language so quickly. Weeks passed, then months, and my baby learned to fight before smiling. Machines surrounded him, each one doing a job I couldn't do myself. Alarms became background noise, yet each beep still froze my breath. You never really get used to that sound. You just survive it. Love in that space becomes constant vigilance. The ventilator was no longer a temporary support. It became the line between breathing and not breathing. When extubation failed, silence filled the room in a way words never could. Then a new word entered our lives, heavy and permanent. And I didn't know it yet, but tracheostomy was about to change everything.
No one ever prepares you for that word. When the doctor said my baby would need a tube to breathe through his neck, it felt like the room tilted, like gravity changed without warning. I smiled, nodded, asked questions like I was strong, but inside, something cracked in a way I still can't fully explain. It wasn't just fear that hit me, it was grief. Grief for the baby I had imagined bringing home with balloons. Grief for the motherhood I thought would look simple and familiar. Normal slipped through my fingers without even saying goodbye. And suddenly, my dreams needed machines to survive. I stared at that tiny device, and 1,000 questions screamed at once. Will this be forever? Will he suffer? Will we ever leave this place? And maybe the hardest one of all, will God still hear me here? Because faith feels different when you're exhausted and afraid. And that quiet battle was only beginning to unfold inside me. I won't pretend my faith stayed untouched through all of this. It didn't disappear, but it shook in ways I'd never felt before. Believing hurts when the future refuses to show its face. You pray, but sometimes the answers feel delayed, muted, distant. And silence can be louder than any bad news. Tracheostomy changes everything, even the way you love. You don't just hold your child, you monitor, you observe, you protect. Every cough sounds like a warning, every pause steals your breath. Sleep becomes light, alert, almost professional. Motherhood turns into a watchful kind of devotion. And yet, something unexpected starts to grow inside you. Strength sneaks in quietly without asking permission. You learn to function while afraid, to love while exhausted. Faith stops being words and becomes endurance. And deep down, I felt something was still being written ahead of us. My baby kept growing, even in a place built for survival. Inside the ICU, surrounded by wires, he still found a way to become himself. His strength didn't come from muscles, but from persistence. Every day alive felt like a quiet rebellion against fear, and I started seeing him differently, not fragile, but powerful. The professionals around us didn't just see a diagnosis. They saw a child with a future worth investing in. They spoke to him, touched him gently, treated him like more than a case. That human care mattered more than people realize. It reminded me that medicine, when done right, carries heart too. Then one day, something shifted in the air. A sentence began with, "What if?" and my heart froze. What if one day the trach could be removed? I didn't let myself believe it, not yet. But that single thought planted a seed I couldn't ignore. Hope didn't come crashing in like a miracle scene from a movie. It arrived quietly, wearing the clothes of responsibility and planning. There was talk of evaluations, protocols, and careful next steps. Not promises, not guarantees, just possibility. And strangely, that felt safer than sudden optimism. They spoke about a specialized project focused on airway health, a team willing to look beyond keeping him alive and toward helping him live. For the first time, survival wasn't the finish line anymore. There was strategy, intention, and long-term vision involved. Hope, I learned, can be incredibly practical. When they prepared him for bronchoscopy, my heart wouldn't sit still. A tiny camera to look inside his airway, searching for answers. While the professionals worked, I did the only thing I could do. I prayed, not loudly, not perfectly, but honestly. And in that waiting space, reality and hope prepared to meet.
The results didn't bring the ending I secretly wanted that day. The tracheostomy couldn't be removed. Not yet, not safely. Risk was still part of the equation, and caution led the way. I nodded again, that familiar survival nod I had mastered. And yes, it hurt more than I expected. I won't sugarcoat it. Disappointment hit deep. Because once hope shows up, even quietly, it changes you. I had pictured a different outcome, a faster breakthrough. Letting go of that image felt like another small loss. But something in the words they used stopped me from falling apart. For the first time, I didn't hear the word never. I heard not yet, and that difference mattered. Not yet leaves space for growth, for healing, for tomorrow. It tells you the door isn't closed, just waiting. And suddenly, patience became part of the plan. That's when I finally understood something essential. Decannulation isn't a moment you circle on a calendar. It's not an event, it's a journey, built slowly and intentionally. A process of strengthening, healing, and waiting without shortcuts. And waiting, I learned, is active work. Progress doesn't always announce itself loudly. Sometimes it looks like less secretion, steadier breathing, more time off mechanical ventilation, even if just minutes at first. These small wins don't make headlines, but they matter deeply. They're quiet proof that the body remembers how to fight. I had to retrain my eyes to see growth differently, not in leaps, but in consistency, not in miracles, but in persistence, because real progress often whispers instead of shouting. And that whisper was preparing me for another kind of lesson ahead. While my child was learning to breathe, I was learning to stand. Not physically, but emotionally, spiritually, quietly stronger. I realized this journey wasn't just his, it was mine too. And if I didn't grow along the way, I'd break under the weight. So I started paying attention to what I allowed into my heart. I learned, the hard way, not to compare stories. Someone else's timeline was not a verdict on ours. I stopped listening to voices that said, "There's no hope," because hopeless people often speak from fear, not truth. Protecting my faith became an act of survival. Yes, people doubt everything, medicine, systems, even God. But I've seen what care, persistence, and love can actually do. I've watched effort turn into progress when no one was watching. And once you witness that, doubt loses its volume. Because the journey is still moving, even when it's quiet. There was a time when I only saw the tracheostomy as loss. Loss of normal life, loss of ease, loss of certainty. But perspective changes when survival teaches you its language. Today, I don't see a sentence. I see a bridge. A necessary crossing when no other road existed. That small device didn't take my child's future. It protected it, preserved it, guarded it fiercely. It stepped in when his body needed help the most. Without it, there wouldn't be tomorrow to hope for. Sometimes life-saving doesn't look the way we expect. Now, when I look at my child, I see continuity. I see a path that's still unfolding, step by step. The trach isn't the destination. It's part of the route, a chapter that allows other chapters to exist. And this understanding prepared my heart to speak to others. If you're listening to this and your child has a tracheostomy, let me speak to you. Not as an expert, not as a hero, but as someone who's been there. I know how heavy your body feels when your soul is exhausted.
I know the loneliness that comes even when people are around, and I know how invisible pain can be. You might be surviving on autopilot right now, running on love, fear, and very little sleep, feeling like no one truly understands what your days look like. But hear me when I say this. Today does not define tomorrow. This moment is not the full story. There are paths you haven't seen yet, professionals who genuinely care more than you can imagine, processes that work, even when they feel painfully slow. And yes, there is a God who remains present, even in silence, and that quiet presence will carry you forward.
Our journey isn't finished, and I won't pretend it is. My child is still in treatment, and the road still has turns ahead. We don't wake up with all the answers neatly lined up. Some days are heavier than others, and that's just the truth. But we wake up anyway, and that already means something. Today, when I breathe with him, it feels different. Not rushed, not panicked, not drowning in fear. Hope didn't erase the challenges, it changed how I face them. Each breath he takes feels like a quiet victory, and I've learned to honor victories, no matter the size. Choosing hope became a daily decision, not a feeling. Some mornings it shows up strong, others barely whispers. But it's there, asking me not to give up today, because every day alive still counts as a miracle. And this choice gently opens space for what comes next. I've learned that tracheostomy is not the final chapter people imagine. It's not a full stop. It's a comma, a pause that gives meaning to what follows. This chapter carries strength, resilience, and a kind of courage you don't choose. It's written with tired hands and a hopeful heart. And yes, it changes you forever. Difficult chapters don't cancel happy endings. They reveal how much it costs to reach them. They show the nights you stayed standing when sitting felt impossible, the days you believed even when belief hurt. That kind of courage leaves marks, but also legacy. So if you're still here, still fighting, still believing in something more, please hear this. Your story is far from over. What feels heavy now may become the proof of your strength later. There are pages ahead you haven't turned yet, and something tells me the next chapter is already waiting. If you've listened to this story until now, I want you to pause for a second. What part of this journey felt familiar to you? Was it the fear, the waiting, the feeling of having no control? Because knowledge only changes lives when we allow it to move us. And your story, just like mine, is still being written. So let me ask you something important. What if hope isn't something you wait for, but something you practice daily? What would change if you stopped calling your situation the end and started seeing it as a process? Sometimes transformation begins with a single decision to keep going. If this message spoke to you, don't keep it to yourself. Share it with someone who might be fighting in silence. Leave a comment and tell me what keeps you standing on hard days. And if you want to continue learning, growing, and finding strength in stories like this, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. You don't have to walk this journey alone.